Well, the reason I decided to basically quit my job and devote a lot of time to writing The Facebook Effect was because I was convinced that this was becoming possibly the most important company of our era, but certainly the most important internet company of my lifetime up to that point. And I was also extremely impressed by Mark Zuckerberg as a thinker and as a leader. And the growth of Facebook was so rapid that it was just amazing me, and I had to document that and figure out why it happened. That's a very good question. Why is Mark driven to work as hard as he does? I think that he has slowly over time, as Facebook has grown, come to realize that this really is potentially the most impactful thing he could ever have possibly done with his life, and therefore seeing the extraordinary impact that he is having, is just totally devoted to taking it to its ultimate possible extent. And for him, there's almost a little intellectual gamesmanship involved, I think, that he does look at a 7 billion person planet and a service that in his mind only has 550 million users, and it's kind of like, how far can I get, how close can I get to 7 billion? That's kind of what's motivating him now, and if he ever got there, I think he'd probably lose interest and go start another company. Well, the combination on Facebook of our personal and business lives is a very controversial problem, which is neither good nor bad. It depends on your point of view. For me, it's somewhat bad, but I'm a baby boomer and I don't want to be completely transparent. On the other hand, I believe that the world is changing and that on balance, people are far more willing to be transparent and to share ideas and information about themselves. And I do see, Scott McNealy having been basically right a decade ago when he said, "You have no privacy, get over it." So I would say, even if you just think of some of the technological things that are inevitably coming, various kinds of searching and real-time identification of people using video in public places, and honestly, we aren't really going to have that much privacy in public anymore. We may in the bedroom, but aside from that, I think, we are almost forced, even regardless of Facebook's existence, to move towards a mindset where we just accept that our information is going to be more disclosed. Now that brings up all kinds of problems of how much you trust the government to do the proper thing with your information, and could we see the rise of despots that exploited that to hurt us? And those are real questions that I don't have an answer to. I don't think governments will necessarily have to regulate Facebook. I think governments will necessarily want to regulate Facebook, and what they want to do, they do. So honestly, I don't think Facebook really has much hope of escaping regulatory oversight and probably specific legislation in many countries, or even possibly the ITU for all that I know. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, because the more it happens, I think it slows the pace of innovation and evolution for Facebook, because governments will never be able to stay abreast of the pace of technology change, which Facebook, more than any other company, essentially exemplifies at scale at the moment. But you've already seen it. Countries are already regulating Facebook. There's just no getting around it. Well, I never actually, if I said Facebook is a force for world peace, I don't know if I believed it even then. But I do quote people in my book who, including Facebook board member Peter Thiel, who thinks that it very well could be. And the way he talks about it is, either we succeed in moving towards more, true, effective, and kind of tolerant globalization, or the world essentially immolates, that we don't really have any choice besides successful globalization. And Facebook he sees as the most effective tool for kind of understanding that the world has yet produced. And I kind of generally go along with that. World peace is a very strident, kind of term that I would hesitate to use, because I don't know if we'll ever really have that. But I absolutely do believe that Facebook is a tool for better understanding between people, and that in general, the more you can facilitate efficient communication, the more you're likely to have a happier, healthier, more peaceful planet. Well, number one, how do they deal with governments who are going to try to get their arms around it in probably in unproductive ways? I think they've got to solve the privacy issues better than they have. They've got to give people better group controls so that you can assign your friends and your relations and acquaintances into groups that are appropriately segmented from the others depending on the nature of your relationship with them. That to me is one of Facebook's biggest technology and product design challenges. Also, clearly, the more they grow, the harder they have to just work to keep the damn system operating. It has not crashed much so far, but systems always crash. It's probably the most complex technology infrastructure that has ever existed, and increasingly is becoming more that way every day. So they will almost certainly face embarrassing, technology lapses, and they will have to overcome that and continue to grow, and somehow convince people that it's not going to be the normal way it's going to go. And so far, they've been stunningly successful with that. The battle, you ask about a battle between Facebook, Google, and Apple. There are actually other companies that I think equally have to participate in that. Microsoft certainly, Amazon probably, and you can even ask down the road whether companies like IBM, HP, there's so many companies that are so deeply, have so many interests in the evolution of this space as it does begin to, encompass our work lives as well as our personal lives, which it will do. But in general, I think the issue between Google and Facebook is the most interesting because, Facebook has sort of stolen Google's thunder as the most interesting and most rapidly growing company on the internet and the one that everybody likes to talk about, which is great for me as the expert. I love that. Google's still a lot richer than Facebook, so Facebook doesn't have the financial resources that Google has. But Google does not have something critical that Facebook has, which is social data. I think everyone pretty much believes that search is going to be dramatically changed by social data, and Google has a serious problem that it doesn't have that much social data. And it's especially considering that Microsoft does have a lot of social data because it's partnered with Facebook. So you're going to see a lot of shifting alliances probably, and dramatic strategic shifts and changes between these companies, and probably a rising Microsoft in the area of search over time in general. And I think if Google doesn't solve the social problem, it better develop some new businesses and figure out a way to make some money from Android. Well, if your employees are spending time on Facebook on the job, all that means is they're human beings in the modern world. I mean, that's what people do increasingly in every country on the planet, and you can't stop them from being themselves at work. So I think companies have to figure out a way to accommodate the inevitability that employees are going to be on Facebook. Just like we were talking about some company where so many people work so hard that they watch Hulu videos at 4 in the afternoon, right? If you work 100 hours a week, you can't really criticize the employee for doing that. And honestly, I think more and more employees are going to find less and less distinction between their work and personal lives anyway. So if you let them have some degree of personal life at work, you're probably going to get more productivity out of them. Well, actually, I think Facebook is being used more aggressively in most other countries than it is in the United States, particularly by adults. And a lot of Americans like to generalize about Facebook, thinking they understand it because they see how they and their friends use it. But in fact, in places like Indonesia or South Africa or Turkey, where the internet has not been as big a part of public life in the past, a lot of people are coming onto the internet on their mobile devices in order to use Facebook. Or the first thing they do on the internet is Facebook, and it often becomes a very high percentage of all the things they do on the internet. That's not the case here. We are very internet-ized in the American context, and we know all the things we can do with it. And I think also, though, because we've used email so heavily, we don't feel as much need to use Facebook as a communications tool. And there are a lot of people in other countries who actually intuit that Facebook is actually a better tool for certain kinds of communications than email is, and they're embracing it more aggressively than we are.